Even gardeners who've been rooting cuttings for 20 years still make these rooting mistakes. Not because they're careless, because some of these mistakes look exactly like good gardening. Today you're getting 7 real rooting mistakes, backed by university extension research and propagation experts. None of these are guesses or old gardening myths. Every single one comes straight from actual research on why cuttings fail. Mistake number 7 is something almost everyone does without thinking twice. But mistake number 1, it's caused by caring too much, by trying too hard to help a cutting succeed. Most gardeners never even suspect it's a mistake at all. It's often the exact tool experienced growers reach for first. And that's exactly the problem. Stick around. By the time we get there, you'll never look at your propagation station the same way again. Let's start with a mistake almost every gardener makes without noticing. Here's the thing about rooting cuttings. It looks incredibly simple. Cut a stem, stick it in soil, wait for roots. You've probably felt the disappointment already. A cutting that looked perfectly healthy for 2 weeks, then suddenly turned brown and mushy overnight. It wasn't bad luck. Something specific went wrong, and it's almost always one of these 7 things. But underneath that simplicity, a cutting is going through something brutal. The moment you cut it, that stem loses its root system completely. No way to pull up water. No way to anchor itself. It's essentially a wound trying to survive on stored energy while attempting to grow an entirely new organ from scratch. That's why small mistakes matter so much more here than almost anywhere else in gardening. A cutting has 0 margin for error. No established roots to fall back on if something goes wrong. Get one thing wrong on an established plant in your garden, and it usually shrugs it off. Get one thing wrong on a cutting, and can be dead within days. Experienced gardeners know this. That's actually part of the problem. The more you know about plants, the more your instincts kick in. And some of those instincts, the ones that work perfectly on established plants, actively work against a rootless cutting. That's the pattern behind almost every mistake on this list. Good instincts applied at exactly the wrong moment. So let's count them down, starting with the one that trips up beginners and veterans alike. Number 7. Using a dull or dirty blade. This sounds too basic to matter. It matters more than almost anything else on this list. A dull blade doesn't cut plant tissue cleanly. It crushes it. Crushed cells can't heal well. They turn into an open door for bacteria and fungus to move straight in. A dirty blade is worse. Every plant you cut with it before left something behind. Disease, fungal spores, bacteria waiting on the metal edge. Look at the pruning shears sitting in your garage right now. When's the last time you actually cleaned that blade? The fix takes 30 seconds. Wipe your blade with rubbing alcohol before every single cutting session, not just once a month. A quick alcohol wipe kills most of the bacteria and fungal spores riding along on that blade. Skip it, and you're literally injecting disease straight into an open wound. Rubbing alcohol works fast and dries almost instantly. A diluted bleach solution works too, but rinse the blade afterwards so it doesn't damage the next stem. Use a sharp blade angled at 45 degrees for one clean cut instead of a ragged tear. That one habit alone can be the difference between a cutting that roots and one that quietly rots. Number 6. Leaving too many leaves on the cutting. It feels wrong to cut away healthy leaves. Your instinct says more leaves means more energy for the plant. For a rooted plant, that's true. For a cutting, it's exactly backwards. Every leaf on that cutting keeps losing water, constantly, through tiny pores called stomata. That process is called transpiration. A cutting with no roots can't replace that lost water. It's bleeding moisture it has no way to refill. Too many leaves, and the cutting dries out and dies before roots ever get the chance to form. You'll usually see the warning signs within just a few days. Leaves that go limp and droopy, even though the medium underneath is still damp. Extension guides consistently recommend removing leaves from the lower half of the stem. Keep just 2 to 4 leaves near the top. If those remaining leaves are large, like on a hibiscus or hydrangea cutting, cut each one roughly in half. Less leaf surface means less water lost, and the plant still keeps enough green tissue to photosynthesize. Fewer leaves means less water loss. More of the plant's stored energy goes straight toward growing roots instead. Number 5. Taking a cutting from a flowering or budding stem. That flower looks beautiful. It's also working against you. A plant that's flowering has already redirected its energy toward reproduction, not growth. Propagation research backs this up directly. A plant putting energy into flowers roots less readily than one that's simply growing. Roses and lavender are two of the biggest offenders here. Gardeners love cutting a beautifully blooming stem without realizing they picked the worst possible one. The fix is almost too easy. Choose a healthy vegetative stem instead, one with no flowers or flower buds on it anywhere. Look for new growth that's still soft but not floppy. Growers call this semi-hardwood. Spring and early summer usually give you the most vegetative growth to choose from. That's before the plant shifts its energy toward blooming later in the season. Skip the prettiest stem on the plant. Pick the boring one instead. The boring one is the one that actually roots. Number 4. Using garden soil instead of a proper rooting medium. It feels logical. The plant's going to live in soil eventually, so why not start there? Garden soil holds too much water and drains too slowly. For an established plant, that's manageable. For a rootless cutting, it's often fatal. Waterlogged, poorly drained soil is one of the most common reasons cuttings rot before they ever root. University extension guides consistently point to a well-drained rooting medium instead, something like perlite, vermiculite, or coarse sand. A simple 50-50 mix of perlite and peat moss works for most cuttings. You can build it yourself for a few dollars. If you're wondering why not just add extra drainage holes to a soil-filled pot instead, the problem isn't the container. It's that garden soil itself compacts and stays wet at the core, holes or not. These mediums hold just enough moisture without smothering a cutting in water it can't use yet. For mistakes down. Every single one of them looked like a reasonable decision in the moment. That's exactly what makes the next 3 so much harder to catch. Here's the pattern you might be noticing. Every mistake so far comes from doing too little. Too little cleaning. Too little leaf removal. Too little attention to what the stem actually needs. The next 3 mistakes flip that completely. These are mistakes that come from doing too much. From caring, checking, and helping way more than a cutting can actually handle. This is exactly where experienced gardeners get caught. Beginners underwater. Beginners forget to check on cuttings at all. But someone who's propagated hundreds of plants? They know enough to want help. They know enough to feel like an action is a mistake in itself. And that instinct is about to work against them. 3 mistakes left. Mistake number 1 is the one almost nobody sees coming. Number 3, getting the water balance wrong in either direction. Too much water drowns the cutting cells and invites root rot and fungal disease. Too little water, and the cutting dehydrates before it ever gets a chance to root. The trick is hitting the narrow space between those 2 extremes. That's exactly where most experienced growers overcorrect. Here's why this trips up experienced gardeners specifically. They know cuttings need consistent moisture, so they compensate by watering heavily and often. But a cutting doesn't have roots yet to actually use that water. All that moisture just sits in the medium, turning it soggy. The medium should feel like a wrung-out sponge, damp all the way through, but never sitting in standing water. Check it by pressing a finger into the surface. If water pools around your finger, you've gone too far. Watch the stem itself too. A soft, mushy, darkening base usually means overwatering. Crispy, wilted leaves usually mean the cutting is drying out instead. Bottom watering helps here. Set the container in a shallow tray of water. Let the medium soak it up from below instead of pouring water directly onto the cutting. High humidity around the cutting, paired with a medium that's just barely moist, beats heavy watering every single time. Number 2, skipping the hardening off period. A cutting finally roots. The excitement kicks in immediately, and straight outside it goes, into full sun. That excitement is exactly what kills it. A rooted cutting has spent weeks in gentle, indirect light and stable humidity. Full sun and outdoor air are a shock its tissue isn't ready for. Extension research recommends gradually acclimating rooted cuttings over 7 to 10 days. Slowly increase light and lower humidity a little at a time. A simple approach, partial shade for the first few days, then a few hours of morning sun. Finally, a full day outside by the end of the week. Compare that to moving a rooted cutting straight from a humid propagation tray into direct afternoon sun. The leaves can scorch within an hour, even though the roots underneath are perfectly healthy. Skip that transition, and even a perfectly rooted cutting can wilt, scorch, or die within hours of going outside. The irony is brutal. The cutting survives the hardest part, growing roots from nothing, only to die from impatience at the finish line. 2 down. 1 mistake left. It's the one hiding in plain sight in almost every experienced gardener's toolkit. Number 1. Overusing rooting hormone on cuttings that never needed it. Here's the twist. Rooting hormone isn't dangerous. Misusing it is. Extension research is clear on this. Most herbaceous cuttings, plants like coleus and many common houseplants, root perfectly well with no hormone at all. Roses, hydrangeas, and other moderately difficult shrubs can genuinely benefit from it. Pothose mint and coleus almost never need it. But experienced gardeners know rooting hormone exists. And once you know a tool exists, it's tempting to use it on everything. Too much hormone doesn't just fail to help. It actively damages the cutting. Research shows excess hormone can cause yellowing leaves, blackened stems, and even kill the cutting outright. Commercial rooting solutions are typically formulated between 500 and 1,000 parts per million. Going stronger than the label recommends doesn't speed things up. It just raises the risk of burning the stem. The plant that needed a boost often didn't need one at all. The hormone was the injury, not the cure. The fix is simple. Save rooting hormone for genuinely difficult species. Skip it entirely on easy-to-root plants and let the cutting do what it was already capable of doing. The most experienced gardeners in the room are often the ones with a shelf full of rooting powder. And that shelf is exactly why mistake number 1 keeps happening. So here's what all 7 of these mistakes really have in common. None of them come from laziness. Every single one comes from a gardener trying to do the right thing, just slightly overshooting it. Dull tools, too many leaves, flowering stems, the wrong medium. Those are mistakes of not knowing better. But overwatering, rushing the hardening off period, and reaching for rooting hormone out of habit, those are mistakes of caring too much at exactly the wrong moment. That's the real lesson buried under all 7 of these. A cutting doesn't need more attention. It needs the right amount at the right time. Give it a clean cut, a few leaves, a well-drained medium, and just enough water. Then step back. Let the cutting do what it's biologically built to do. Grow roots on its own timeline, not yours. Remember that gardener with 20 years of experience from the start of this video? This is exactly why they still mess this up sometimes. More knowledge means more instincts firing. And a rootless cutting doesn't care how many years you've been gardening. The gardeners who get this right aren't doing more. They're doing less, more precisely. You just went through 7 real rooting mistakes, the same ones tripping up gardeners at every experience level. If mistake number 1 caught you off guard, you're not alone. Most experienced growers make that exact mistake without realizing it. Comment which mistake you're guilty of. Be honest, we've all made at least one of these. Even a single fix from this list can turn a cutting that used to fail into one that finally roots. If this saved a cutting you haven't taken yet, hit subscribe. Garden Logic breaks down one real gardening mistake like this every week. Now, go check your propagation station. See how many of these 7 are hiding in there right now.